Okay, at this point, I don't think there are better budget-friendly 2021 phones than these on the market right now. And I didn't expect a particular brand to make it on this list, but this is a welcome change. Hi there, I'm David, your favorite Gujarati, and about this time last year, I made a video on the best budget-friendly phones for 2020, and you all loved it. So here are the best budget-friendly smartphones for 2021. This should help you make your Christmas shopping a little bit easier, or maybe a lot easier if you're in the market for a new phone. So without any more hassle, let's get to the video. But before we start, stick around to the end for an honorable mention. First of all, at number 5, we have the Samsung Galaxy A22. The Samsung Galaxy A22 was released in June, and what is surprising to me is that this is the first Samsung device I am able to recommend comfortably to anyone who's looking for a budget Samsung smartphone. And I'm sure that they won't regret it after 6 months of using the device, because usually in the past, Samsung's phones not only degrade, but then they were usually overpriced, in the sense that you'll be able to get another phone or maybe multiple other phones that perform better and outspec the said Samsung phone at the same price, or at least around the same price. But this one is different. If you purchase this phone, you'll be getting a phone with a 6.4-inch Super AMOLED panel with a refresh rate of 90 Hz for the display, a 13 megapixel selfie camera, a 48 megapixel main camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, and a 2 megapixel macro camera, which is powered by the MediaTek Helio G80, which is a fairly good mid-range chip. It has two storage options too, the 64GB option and then the 128GB option, with 4 or 6GB of RAM to go with that. The fingerprint sensor is side mounted on the power button if that is important to you, and it has a 5000 mAh battery which supports 15 watts fast charging, which is then covered by a plastic back and a plastic frame, which is actually expected. It costs about $230, which is about 95,000 naira, and it might drop during the sale, so look out for that. The next phone is the Vivo Y73. So this phone comes with an AMOLED panel, but it still uses the basic 60Hz refresh rate. It supports HDR10, which might be a plus to some of you. It has a 6.44 inches screen, which has a resolution of 1080 by 2400 pixels and an aspect ratio of 20:9. It runs on Android 11 with the FunTouch 11.1 scale on that, and it is powered by the MediaTek Helio G95 chip. It has only one storage and RAM variant, which is 128GB of storage paired with 8GB of RAM. Moving to the camera system, you have a 16 megapixel front-facing selfie camera, and then on the back you have a 64 megapixel main camera with a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera and a 2 megapixel macro camera. Sadly, there is no ultra wide camera on this phone, but then you can record 4K at 30 frames per second. It also has a smaller battery than the previous Samsung that was mentioned. It has a 4000 mAh battery, but then it compensates for that with even faster charging. It supports up to 33 watts fast charging, and it is set to charge up to 61% in 30 minutes. I haven't tested this, but if you get this device and you want to try to make that 100% in 30 minutes, watch my previous video on how to potentially double your charging speed. It costs slightly above 100,000 right now, and right now it is at 115,000 naira, which is about $280. But with a Christmas sale or a New Year's sale, the price is sure to come down and to meet that 100,000 naira benchmark. The third phone on the list is the Oppo F19. Sadly, the Oppo F19 does not have a 90Hz refresh rate or support HDR10+, but it does have superior performance. Under the hood, it has a Qualcomm Snapdragon 662 driving the device. For the screen, it has a 6.43 inches AMOLED display with an aspect ratio of 20:9 and the usual screen resolution of 1080 by 2400 pixels. It runs on Android 11 as its OS, with the ColorOS 11.1 skin on top of it. Like the last phone, it only has one storage variant, 128GB of storage paired with 6GB of RAM. On the back, the camera setup is quite basic. You have a 48 megapixel main camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. Also, there is no ultra wide camera here, so that's a bummer. And sadly, you cannot record 4K on this device. Your video recording is capped at 1080p at 30 FPS, but you do get a better 60 megapixel front facing camera. But you have the fingerprint sensor under the display, which is an added benefit. And then the battery is a 5000 mAh battery which supports 33 watts fast charging, and it is set to charge up to 54% in 30 minutes. And it costs around $250, which is about 100,000 naira. So if you think you found the phone for you. Comment the name of the phone down in the comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Okay, moving on. On number 2, we have my personal favorite, and this is just due to personal bias, the Xiaomi Redmi Note 10s. On the front, the Xiaomi Redmi Note 10s has a 6.43-inch AMOLED display with a resolution of 1080 by 2400 pixels. Sadly, it does not support HDR+ or high refresh rates, but it does have IP53 dust and splash protection. It is powered by the MediaTek Helio G95 chip, which is good enough, and it runs off of Android 11 with the MIUI 12.5 skin on it. It has multiple storage variants where the RAM makes most of the difference. You have 2 storage options. You have 64GB and then 128GB storage options. And for the RAM, the size range from 4GB to 8GB, so you can choose which fits you best, whether it is 4GB, 6GB of RAM or 8GB of RAM. For the camera, on the front you have a 13 megapixel front-facing selfie camera, while on the back you have a 64 megapixel main camera, then a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera, then a macro camera, and yes, this one has an ultra wide camera. You have an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera. This camera setup is capable of recording 4K video at 30 frames per second, which is kind of normal at this point, but it has a 5000 mAh battery, which is capable of 33 watts fast charging. But the interesting thing about this phone is that there are many models of this one. There's the Redmi Note 10s, there's the Redmi Note 10, and then there's the Redmi Note 10 Pro, which I must say would be a steal if you push for a bit more money and you watch out for a sale that will reduce the price and make it easier for you to get the phone. And finally, at the top of the list, we have the Realme Q3 Pro 5G. Yes, I said 5G. Yes, this budget under $250 phone supports 5G. Yes, I know that sounds crazy. It is really crazy. It is a lot. But that's not the only interesting thing about this device. On the front, it has a 6.43-inch Super AMOLED display with a refresh rate of 120 Hz. That's the highest I have mentioned in this video. With a resolution of 1080 by 2400 pixels with 20:9 for the aspect ratio. It runs on Android 11, and under the hood, what powers this device is MediaTek's Dimensity 1100 5G chip, MediaTek's Dimensity 1100 5G chip, which is a lot for a budget phone, but that is what Realme is doing. They are becoming the budget king makers and putting more competition in the smartphone market, which is always good for us consumers because more competition means you get better value at a cheaper price. For the storage variant of this device, it starts at 128GB, and then the second storage variant is a 256GB storage option, and the RAM options are 6GB and 8GB. The camera setup is quite different. On the front, you have a typical front-facing selfie camera, but then on the back, you have a 64 megapixel main camera, then an 8 megapixel ultra-wide angle camera, and then a 2 megapixel macro camera. Notice that there isn't a depth sensing camera on this device. Well, it's actually questionable, but I guess portrait mode would tell if this was a wise decision. The device is capable of recording 4K video at 30 frames per second, and not only 30 frames per second, but also at 60 frames per second on a $250 phone. Yes, you get stereo speakers, and then for the battery, you have a 4500 mAh battery which supports 30 watts fast charging, which is said to charge up to about 100% in less than an hour, and it costs only 95,000 naira, which is about $230. My friends, I tell you, this is a steal. This is a deal. And for the honorable mention, we have the OnePlus Nord N10 5G. It was released last year, but it will be an amazing device for the price now. It supports 5G, it has 98Hz refresh rate, Snapdragon 690 chip with 30 watts fast charging. It will be a great device to look into if you are open to buying a 2020 device. Let me know which phone was your favorite phone on the list. And if you want me to do any other list videos, let me know down in the comment section below. If you love the video, a sub would be massively appreciated. If you think it was just decent, a thumbs up will do for now. That's it, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.